I was sitting at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold, staring at my phone screen in complete disbelief. The family group chat message glowed harshly. "We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." My hands trembled as I read it again. 3 years of sending $2,000 every month. 3 years of believing I was the good son, the responsible brother, the family provider. My uncle packed them up and moved them away without a word. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as rage built in my chest. Time for the truth. The first thing I did was call my mom, straight to voicemail. Then my sister Emma, disconnected number. My brother Tyler. Same thing. Every single family member had changed their phone numbers without telling me. I sat there, holding my phone, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. I kept reading that text message over and over. "We need distance from you." After everything I had done for them, after all the sacrifices I had made, the words felt like acid burning through my chest. Let me back up and explain how this whole thing started. 3 years ago, my dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack. I was 28 years old, working as a software engineer in Seattle, making good money. The family was devastated. But beyond the emotional pain, there were practical problems. Mom called me crying about how she couldn't handle the mortgage payments on her own. The house in Sacramento where I grew up suddenly felt like this impossible burden. "Drake, I don't know what we're going to do," she sobbed over the phone. "Your father handled all the finances. I'm looking at these bills and I just can't make sense of any of it. The mortgage alone is $1,800 a month, and that's not counting utilities, groceries, car payments, insurance. I'm working part-time at the grocery store, but it's barely covering anything." My heart broke hearing her like that. Sarah had always been the emotional center of our family, the one who held everything together with hugs and homemade cookies. Seeing her fall apart over money felt wrong on every level. Then Emma called. She was 24, in her final year at UC Davis, studying business administration. "Drake, I hate asking you this, but am drowning in expenses. My part-time job at the campus bookstore isn't covering rent and groceries. I've been living on ramen noodles for weeks. Can you help me out just until I graduate and find a real job?" Tyler was the worst off. At 26, he had been jumping between construction jobs, never finding anything stable. When Dad died, he was in the middle of another unemployment stretch. "Bro, I know this is terrible timing, but I got evicted last week. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch. I just need enough for first and last month's rent somewhere, and I promise I'll pay you back as soon as I land something steady." What was I supposed to do? These were the people who raised me, who supported me through college, who celebrated every promotion and achievement. Family takes care of family. That's what Dad always taught us. So I stepped up. I set up automatic transfers from my checking account. $2,000 every month, split between helping Mom with the mortgage, covering Emma's college expenses, and making sure Tyler had a place to live and food to eat. It felt good to be the provider, to be the one they could count on. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like I was filling that role he left behind. The thing is, $2,000 a month adds up fast. That's $24,000 a year. Over 3 years, I had sent them $72,000. My own savings account went from healthy to nearly empty. I stopped contributing to my retirement fund. I moved to a smaller apartment. I drove my old Toyota Camry instead of buying something newer when it started having problems, but I told myself it was temporary. Emma would graduate and get a good job. Tyler would find stable work. Mom would adjust to managing on her own. We'd all get back on our feet together. Except somewhere along the way, the phone calls changed. Instead of gratitude, I started hearing impatience when I asked how everyone was doing. Family gatherings happened without me knowing about them. When I visited Sacramento, Conversations felt stilted and awkward. Everyone seemed eager for me to leave. I started noticing little things, like when I called to check on Mom, she'd be distracted, like she was doing something more important. When I asked Emma about school, her answers got shorter and shorter. Tyler stopped updating me about his job search altogether, but I pushed those feelings aside. Family goes through rough patches. People get stressed about money and take it out on each other. That's normal, right? Then came that text message. 3 years of sacrifice, and they wanted me to stop contacting them completely. No explanation, no conversation, just a cold, brutal dismissal. I logged into my banking app with shaking fingers. There it was, line after line of automatic transfers. $2,000 every month for 36 months. $72,000 of my life savings. Gone. And for what? So they could tell me to disappear? I was staring at those numbers when something occurred to me. When was the last time any of them had posted on social media? I realized I hadn't seen updates from Emma in months. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen much from any of them lately. I opened Instagram and searched for Emma's account. What I found made my blood run cold. There was my little sister, supposedly broke and living on ramen noodles, wearing a designer jacket that cost more than my monthly rent. The post was from 2 days ago. She was standing next to a brand new Honda Civic, keys in her hand, caption reading, "Finally got my dream car. So blessed." I scrolled through more posts. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, a spring break trip to Miami that must have cost thousands. All of this while she was supposedly struggling to afford groceries and textbooks. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. 3 years of sending money to help my sister survive college, and she was living better than I was. That's when I knew I had been played. The question was, how deep did this betrayal go? I screenshotted everything on Emma's Instagram, my mind racing. If she was lying about her financial situation, what about Tyler and Mom? What about all those desperate phone calls and emergency requests? Tyler's social media told an even worse story. His Facebook was full of pictures showing off a brand new Harley-Davidson motorcycle. The bike alone was worth at least $15,000. He was also posting photos of expensive power tools, bragging about his new workshop setup in what looked like a garage much bigger than anything he could afford on unemployment. But the posts that really got to me were the ones with his friends. Pictures of them at expensive steakhouses, craft breweries, weekend fishing trips with high-end gear. This was not a man struggling to pay rent. This was someone living comfortably while lying to his brother about being desperate. I kept digging. "Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." But I could clearly see the message thread, and my name was all over it. The messages were between Tyler, Emma, Mom, and Uncle Jerry. They were talking about me. Drake sent another $2,000 this month. Tyler had written, "Dude is so gullible it's almost sad." "I know, right," Emma replied. "I just bought the cutest dress and told him I needed help with textbooks. He bought it immediately." "You guys are terrible," Mom wrote, but she was laughing. I could tell from the crying, laughing emoji she used. But Jerry's right, as desperate for our approval. We might as well take advantage while we can. Then Uncle Jerry. "Trust me, I've been handling situations like this for years. Keep playing up the struggling single mom thing, Sarah. Emma, keep talking about college stress. Tyler, mention job applications every few weeks. Hell, keep sending money as long as he thinks he's helping family." My vision blurred. I felt like I was going to throw up. They weren't just taking my money. They were laughing about it. I was a joke to them. But the worst part was reading further. Jerry had written, "We're going to need to cut him off soon, though. Hess starting to ask too many questions, and frankly, we don't need him anymore. I'm helping Sarah buy that house in Roseville next month. Tyler's got the construction management job locked up. Emma's graduating with no debt thanks to her scholarship money that she never mentioned to Drake. Wait, what scholarship money? I said out loud to my empty apartment. I went back to Emma's social media and looked more carefully. Sure enough, buried in her posts from 2 years ago was a celebration photo. She was holding a certificate and grinning. The caption read, "Full academic scholarship to UC Davis. So grateful for this opportunity. 4 years of college completely paid for. 4 years completely paid for." While I had been sending her money every month for college expenses that didn't exist. I called Jessica, my girlfriend of 8 months. She picked up on the first ring. "Drake, what's wrong? You sound terrible." "Jess, I need you to come over right now and bring wine." "A lot of wine. I'm on my way." While I waited for Jessica to arrive, I kept investigating. I found Tyler's LinkedIn profile, which painted a very different picture than the unemployed loser he portrayed to me. According to his work history, he had been employed as a construction project manager for the last 8 months, earning $65,000 a year. The company looked legitimate, and his connections included people I recognized from the Sacramento area construction industry. 8 months. He had been employed for 8 months while telling me he was desperately searching for work. Jessica arrived with a bottle of wine and took one look at my face. What happened? I showed her everything. The Instagram posts, the Facebook photos, the text message screenshots, the LinkedIn profile. $72,000 paid out over 3 years to people who were not only lying about needing help, but were actively mocking me behind my back. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression getting darker with each revelation. "Drake, I have to tell you something," she finally said. "I never liked how much money you were sending them. It always seemed excessive, but every time I tried to bring it up, you got defensive about family loyalty. You think I'm an idiot. No, I think you're generous to a fault, and they took advantage of that. But honey, this is worse than I imagined. This isn't just taking advantage. This is organized fraud." She was right. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this had been planned from the beginning. Uncle Jerry seemed to be orchestrating the whole thing, coaching them on what to say and how to keep me sending money. I poured myself another glass of wine and kept digging into Jerry's social media. What I found there made everything else look like small change. Jerry's Facebook showed him standing in front of a large moving truck with his company logo on the side. Jerry's Moving Solutions, making life transitions easy. He owned a moving company, a successful one, from the looks of it, but more importantly, his recent posts showed him helping my family move to a new house. A big house in an upscale neighborhood of Roseville. There was Mom, standing in front of a beautiful 2-story home with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. This was not the struggling widow who couldn't afford her mortgage payments. I showed Jessica the photos. "Look at this house. This is where my money went. I paid for the down payment on this place while living in a crappy 1-bedroom apartment so I could afford to help my struggling family. Drake, you need to call them. Right now. Demand an explanation." But as I looked at that group text screenshot again, one more detail caught my attention. At the very bottom, Jerry had written, "Don't worry about Drake figuring anything out. After we get the final $5,000 for Sarah's medical emergency next week, we're cutting contact permanently. He'll handle moving everyone away from Sacramento so he can't just show up. By the time he realizes what happened, we'll be settled and hell have no way to find us." The final $5,000. I checked my bank account. Sure enough, just last week I had sent an emergency payment of $5,000. Mom had called crying about unexpected medical bills from a specialist visit. She needed money immediately, or they were going to send her to collections. Medical bills that apparently never existed. They had planned this. All of it. The dramatic cutoff wasn't emotional reaction. It was the final stage of a 3-year con game, orchestrated by Uncle Jerry and executed by my entire family. I was sitting there, wine making me feel simultaneously numb and furious, when Jessica said the words that changed everything. "You know what you need to do, right? You need to fight back." Jessica was right. But I had no idea where to start. How do you fight back against people who have systematically lied to you for 3 years? How do you prove that emergency payments were based on fictional crises? "We need help," Jessica said. "Professional help. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is fraud, and you need to treat it like the crime it is." The next morning, I called in sick to work and started making phone calls. The first person I reached out to was Frank Morrison, my dad's old business partner. Frank and Dad had run a small accounting firm together before Dad moved on to corporate finance. If anyone knew about my family's real financial situation, it would be Frank. "Drake, I'm so sorry to hear about what happened," Frank said when I explained the situation. "But I have to tell you, I'm not entirely surprised." "What do you mean?" "Your Uncle Jerry came to see me about 6 months after your father passed. He was asking a lot of questions about your dad's estate, about what you inherited, about your financial situation. It felt inappropriate at the time, but I figured he was just looking out for the family." "What kind of questions?" "Specifically how much money you made, whether you had savings, if you were financially stable enough to help the family long term." He kept pushing for details about your income and job security. I told him it was none of his business, but he said Sarah was worried about asking you for too much help. My stomach dropped. So he was planning this from right after Dad died. It looks that way. And Drake, there's something else you need to know. After your father passed, Jerry came by the office claiming Sarah needed help accessing some of your dad's financial accounts. He said she was too emotional to handle the paperwork herself. Did you help him? "I helped Sarah directly, not Jerry. But I found out later that Jerry had accessed one of your father's retirement accounts before I could help Sarah close it. There was about $15,000 in there that should have gone to her. But somehow Jerry convinced the bank that he was authorized to handle your father's affairs. $15,000, stolen from my father's estate while my mother was grieving. Frank, do you have any documentation of that?" "I have copies of all the estate paperwork. I can send you everything." "Drake, if what you're telling me is true, Jerry has been running a scam on your family and using that stolen money to buy their cooperation." That afternoon, Frank emailed me a folder full of documents, bank statements, insurance policies, retirement account records. The trail was clear. Uncle Jerry had accessed accounts he had no legal right to touch and had somehow convinced my family that this was normal estate management. But the real smoking gun was in Dad's will. According to the legal documents, I was supposed to inherit that $15,000 retirement account directly. Dad had specifically named me as the beneficiary, not the estate. Jerry had stolen money that legally belonged to me. Armed with Frank's documentation, I called a lawyer. Jessica had found somebody who specialized in estate fraud and family financial crimes. His name was David Chen, and he agreed to see me that same day. Attorney Chen listened to my story while taking detailed notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Drake, what you're describing is a textbook case of coordinated financial fraud with possible elder abuse components. The fact that your uncle accessed estate funds illegally gives us a criminal component as well. What are my options?" "Several. We can pursue civil recovery of the fraudulent payments. We can file criminal complaints about the estate theft. And we can investigate whether your uncle's moving business is involved in other similar scams. These types of operations rarely target just one family. If your uncle has been coaching relatives on how to extract money from financially stable family members, has probably done this before. Chen referred me to a private investigator who specialized in financial crimes. Her name was Maria Santos, and she had 20 years of experience with fraud cases. Maria's investigation moved fast. Within a week, she had uncovered information that made my situation look like part of a much bigger pattern. Your uncle's moving business has been involved in relocating at least 6 families over the past 5 years, Maria explained during our follow-up meeting. In each case, the families had a financially successful relative who was providing regular financial support. In each case, Jerry's company helped them move to new locations where the supporting relative couldn't easily find them. So this is his business model. It appears so. He identifies families with a generous, financially stable member. He coaches them on how to extract maximum money over several years. Then he helps them disappear when they're ready to cut contact. What happened to the other families? 2 of them were elderly parents who convinced their adult children they were struggling financially while actually living quite comfortably. One was a single mother who convinced her successful brother she needed constant emergency help while working a full-time job she never mentioned. The pattern is always the same. Jerry takes a percentage of the money extracted, plus fees for his moving services. I felt sick. This wasn't just personal betrayal. My family had been recruited into a criminal enterprise that specialized in exploiting family loyalty. But here's the important part. Maria continued. You're not the first victim to fight back. 2 of the other families have been contacted by their victims, and there's enough evidence building to interest federal investigators. Federal investigators, wire fraud, elder abuse, systematic financial crimes across state lines. This is bigger than local police can handle. The FBI has been building a case against your uncle for the past year. Maria handed me a business card. Agent Rebecca Foster, FBI Financial Crimes Unit. She's going to want to talk to you. That night, Jessica and I sat in my apartment, going through all the evidence we had collected. Bank records, social media screenshots, Frank's estate documents, Mariah's investigation report, and now contact information for a federal agent. I can't believe this is real, I said. 3 days ago, I thought my family just didn't want me around anymore. Now I find out they're part of some criminal operation. Are you going to call the FBI agent? I looked at that business card for a long time. Once I made that call, there would be no going back. This would become a criminal matter, not just a family dispute. But then I thought about those text messages laughing about how gullible I was. I thought about the $72,000 I had sent believing I was helping people I loved. I thought about my dad's stolen inheritance money being used to buy their cooperation and lying to me. Most importantly, I thought about the other families Maria had mentioned, people who were probably going through the same thing I was, right now. Yeah, I said. I'm calling her tomorrow. But first, I had a message to send. Agent Foster returned my call within 2 hours. Her voice was professional but warm, and she seemed genuinely interested in what I had to tell her. Mr. Drake, your situation fits a pattern we've been tracking for over a year. Your uncle's operation has been on our radar, but we've been missing some crucial evidence. What you've uncovered could be the breakthrough we need. We arranged to meet the following day at the FBI field office in Seattle. I spent the evening organizing every piece of evidence I had collected: bank statements, social media screenshots, estate documents from Frank, Mariah's investigation report, even that accidental group text screenshot Marcus had posted. The FBI office was intimidating, but Agent Foster put me at ease immediately. She was probably in her 40s, professional but not cold, and clearly experienced with this type of case. Let me explain what we know about Jerry Sullivan's operation, she began, spreading out files across a conference room table. Over the past 5 years, We've documented at least 8 families involved in systematic financial exploitation schemes. The pattern is always similar. Jerry identifies a financially successful individual with strong family loyalty. He coaches relatives on how to present financial emergencies in the most compelling way possible. He helps them maintain the deception over several years, taking a percentage of the extracted funds. Finally, he relocates the family to avoid discovery and helps them cut contact permanently. 8 families, that we know of. The total amount extracted across all cases is over $400,000. Your $72,000 represents one of the larger individual cases. Agent Foster showed me photos of other families involved. I didn't recognize anyone, but the stories were eerily familiar. Adult children convinced their parents needed constant financial help. Siblings claiming unemployment while working steady jobs. Medical emergencies that never happened. The challenge has been getting victims to come forward, Agent Foster explained. Most people are too embarrassed to admit they've been systematically deceived by family members. Others worry about the legal implications of pursuing charges against relatives. But this is definitely criminal. Multiple felonies. Wire fraud because money was transferred across state lines. Elder abuse in cases involving senior citizens. Identity theft because Jerry accessed your father's accounts illegally. Tax fraud because none of the participants reported this income properly. And racketeering because this appears to be an ongoing criminal enterprise. Agent Foster explained that my evidence was particularly valuable because I had documented the entire timeline, from the initial requests for help to the final cutoff message. Most importantly, I had proof that Jerry was coaching the family members and taking a percentage of the money. We'd like you to cooperate with our investigation. That would mean allowing us to monitor any future contact from your family, providing testimony about the fraud, and possibly participating in recorded phone calls if they try to re-establish contact. I agreed immediately. At that point, I wanted justice more than anything else. But Agent Foster had a warning. You should know that once we move forward with federal charges, this becomes very public. There will be arrests, media coverage, court proceedings. Your family members will face serious criminal penalties if convicted. Jerry could be looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. What about the others? My mom, my brother and sister. That depends on how much they cooperated with Jerry versus how much they were manipulated by him. The evidence suggests your sister and brother were willing participants who knew they were defrauding you. Your mother's situation is more complex. She may have been influenced by Jerry's manipulation, especially in the grief period after your father's death. I thought about this for a long time. Did I really want to pursue criminal charges against Emma and Tyler? But then I remembered those text messages mocking me, the years of lies, the systematic deception. They made their choice. I told Agent Foster, I'm not going to enable them to do this to other people. Over the next 2 weeks, Agent Foster and her team worked with me to prepare the case. We organized all the financial evidence, documented the timeline of deception, and coordinated with Mariah's private investigation findings. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would send one message to my family, letting them know that I was aware of the deception and that they were under federal investigation. The message would be carefully crafted with legal guidance to maximize the evidence value while staying within legal bounds. But first, Agent Foster wanted me to take one specific action that would lock in the evidence of their fraud. We need you to cancel all the automatic transfers and freeze the accounts they've been accessing. But we want to do this in a way that creates a clear paper trail. Can you go to your bank in person and request a formal review of all transactions over the past 3 years? I met with my bank manager, Jessica Rodriguez, at the downtown Seattle branch. She was professional and helpful when I explained that I needed to review potential fraudulent transactions on my account. Mr. Drake, I see you've been making regular transfers of $2,000 per month for 36 months. These all appear to be legitimate transfers that you initiated. Are you saying these were made without your knowledge? No, I made them. But they were based on false information provided by the recipients. I was told the money was for emergency expenses, mortgage assistance, and college costs. I've since learned that the emergencies were fictional and the recipients were financially stable. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled up detailed records of every transfer. The good news is that we have complete documentation of every transaction, including the stated purposes you provided when setting up the automatic transfers. That could be important evidence if you're pursuing legal action. She helped me cancel all automatic transfers and flag the accounts to prevent any future unauthorized access. More importantly, she provided me with certified bank records showing the complete transaction history, including my notes about the purpose of each transfer. With the bank records secured and the FBI case moving forward, it was time to craft my response to that original text message. Agent Foster and Attorney Chen worked together to create a message that would accomplish several things: notify the family that their fraud had been discovered, establish that I was pursuing legal remedies, and create an opportunity for them to reveal additional information through their responses. The message was simple but devastating. Of course, I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing. I'll also be canceling the mortgage assistance, utility coverage, emergency fund access, and the $15,000 from Dad's estate that Uncle Jerry stole. My attorney will contact you about returning the fraudulently obtained funds. The federal investigators handling Jerry's case will appreciate your cooperation. I just thought you should know. Agent Foster reviewed the message carefully. This covers all the key points. It notifies them that you know about the estate theft, that you're aware the financial assistance was fraudulent, and that there's an active federal investigation. It also leaves room for them to respond in ways that might provide additional evidence. When should I send it? Tomorrow morning. Well, be monitoring your phone for any responses, and we've coordinated with Sacramento police in case anyone tries to contact you in person. That evening, Jessica and I went out for dinner at our favorite restaurant. It was the first time in weeks that I felt like I could actually enjoy myself. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" she asked. Nervous, excited, angry, relieved. Pretty much every emotion at once. "Do you think they'll try to contact you?" "Oh, they'll definitely try to contact me. The question is whether they'll try to apologize, threaten me, or just disappear completely." Jessica raised her wine glass. "To justice, and to finding out who your real family is." As we clinked glasses, I realized she was right. The people who had supported me through this crisis, Frank, Maria, Agent Foster, Attorney Chen, and especially Jessica, these were the people who actually cared about my well-being. Blood relationship didn't automatically create family. Loyalty, honesty, and mutual support did. The next morning, I woke up early and read the message one more time. My finger hovered over the send button for about 30 seconds. Then I pressed it and watched my phone light up with responses almost immediately. The first call came within 5 minutes of sending the message. It was from a blocked number, but I recognized Tyler's voice immediately. "Drake, what the hell is this about federal investigators? Are you seriously trying to get our family arrested over some money?" Agent Foster had coached me to let any calls go to voicemail initially, so I could review the responses with the FBI team before deciding how to handle ongoing contact. "You need to call me back right now," Tyler continued in the voicemail. "This is insane. We can work this out like family. Don't ruin everyone's lives over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. $72,000 and 3 years of systematic deception was a misunderstanding. The voicemails kept coming. Emma left a sobbing message claiming she had been pressured by Uncle Jerry and didn't understand what she was doing. Mom left 3 separate messages, each one more panicked than the last. "Drake, honey, please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. Jerry said you were angry about money, but I never knew there were any problems. Please don't involve lawyers and police in family business. We can fix this." But the call that really got to me was from Uncle Jerry himself. His voice was cold and threatening in a way I had never heard before. "Drake, you're making a big mistake. You don't want to go down this road with me. I've been handling family business for a long time, and I know things about your father that would change how you remember him. Call off your lawyers and investigators, and we can all move on with our lives. Otherwise, you're going to regret this." Threatening me was definitely the wrong move on Jerry's part. I forwarded that voicemail directly to Agent Foster, who called me back within an hour. Obstruction and intimidation of a federal witness. Jerry just made this much worse for himself. We're accelerating our timeline. That afternoon, Tyler showed up at my office building in Seattle. I was working late when building security called to tell me someone was asking for me in the lobby. "Mr. Drake, there's a Tyler claiming to be your brother. He seems upset and he's refusing to leave until he talks to you. Should we call the police? He'll be right down." I found Tyler pacing in the lobby, wearing work clothes and looking furious. The moment he saw me, he started yelling. "Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? Tyler, lower your voice. This is my workplace. I don't care where we are. You just destroyed everything. Mom's in a panic. Emma's crying constantly. And now there are FBI agents asking questions about Jerry's business. Maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 3 years lying to me. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Jerry said it was just temporary help until everyone got back on their feet." "Temporary? Tyler, I saw your LinkedIn. You've been employed for 8 months while telling me you couldn't find work. How is that temporary?" Tyler's expression shifted. For the first time, he looked genuinely surprised. "How did you find out about my job?" "The same way I found out about Emma's scholarship, Mom's new house, your motorcycle, and Jerry's moving business. You people aren't as smart as you think you are. Drake, listen to me. Jerry convinced us that you wanted to help. He said you were lonely and needed to feel important to the family. He said taking your money was actually helping your emotional needs, and you believed that. It made sense at the time. You always wanted to be the responsible one, the provider. Jerry said we were giving you a chance to be the hero." I stared at my brother, looking for any sign that he understood how insane that reasoning was. "Tyler, do you hear yourself? You're saying you defrauded me for my own good. It's not fraud when it's family. Yes, it is. Especially when you're laughing about how gullible I am in group text messages." Tyler's face went pale. "You saw those messages. I saw everything. The jokes about me being desperate for approval. The planning sessions about how to ask for more money. The discussion about cutting me off permanently." Tyler sat down heavily in one of the lobby chairs. For a moment, he looked like the little brother I remembered growing up with. "We never meant for it to hurt you this much. What did you think would happen when I found out?" "Jerry said you'd never find out. He said once we moved away and cut contact, you'd just assume we were mad about something and eventually move on. And that seemed reasonable to you." Tyler didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "No, it didn't seem reasonable, but Jerry made it sound like the only option. He said if we tried to pay you back or explain what had happened, you'd be even more hurt than if we just disappeared. So you chose to let me think my entire family hated me rather than admit you had been lying. Drake, I know how it sounds now, but Jerry was convincing. He said Head handled situations like this before, and that a clean break was better for everyone." I looked at my brother and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Tyler wasn't evil. He was weak and easily manipulated. That didn't excuse what he had done, but it helped me understand how Jerry's operation worked. Tyler, how many other families has Jerry done this to? I don't know what you're talking about. The FBI says he's been running this scam on multiple families. You're not the first people he's coached through defrauding a relative. Tyler's expression changed again. That's not possible. Jerry said our situation was unique. Did he ask for a percentage of the money I sent? Silence. Tyler, did Jerry take a cut? He said it was for helping us manage the logistics. Moving costs, coaching fees, business expenses. How much? 20%. 20% of $72,000 was over $14,000. Jerry had made more money from my family's deception than most people earned in several months. Tyler, you realize you're victims too, right? Jerry manipulated you into defrauding me, then took a cut of the money for himself. Tyler stared at me for a long moment. What do you mean? He identified me as a target, recruited you and Emma and Mom to extract money from me, coached you on how to be convincing, and then took a percentage of the proceeds. That's called operating a criminal enterprise. But we kept most of the money, did you? How much of that $72,000 do you actually have left? Tyler thought about it. Well, there was the house down payment, and the new cars, and the moving expenses, and Jerry's fees. And how much is left? Maybe $15,000. Total, between all of us. So, Jerry's operation extracted $72,000 from me, and you have $15,000 left to show for it. Where did the other $57,000 go? Tyler couldn't answer that question, which meant Jerry's operation was even more sophisticated than I had realized. Building security approached us. Sir, visiting hours are ending. You'll need to either sign your guest in officially or ask him to leave. Hez leaving, I said. Tyler stood up slowly. Drake, what happens now? Now you cooperate with the federal investigation and hope the prosecutor takes your cooperation into account when deciding what charges to file. And if we don't cooperate, then you go to trial for wire fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to identity theft. Federal charges, Tyler. This isn't municipal court. As I watched my brother walk away, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The person I had been trying to help for 3 years wasn't the person I thought he was. But at least now, I knew the truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Foster. We just executed search warrants on Jerry's business and residence. You might want to prepare yourself for what we're going to find. The next morning, Agent Foster called with an update that exceeded my wildest expectations. Drake, we hit the jackpot. Jerry's files contained documentation of 12 different family fraud operations, including yours. We found spreadsheets tracking the money extracted from each family, coaching scripts for different types of emergency requests, and detailed profiles of target individuals. 12 families, over a 6-year period. Your case was one of the most successful, which probably explains why it went on for 3 years. Total documented fraud across all cases is over $600,000. $600,000. I had thought my situation was bad. But Jerry had been running a systematic operation that destroyed multiple families. We also found evidence of money laundering through his moving business, tax evasion on the proceeds, and identity theft in several other cases. Jerry's looking at 20 years in federal prison if convicted on all charges. What about my family? That's more complicated. Tyler and Emma were clearly willing participants who knew they were defrauding you. They'll face charges, but their cooperation could result in reduced sentences. Your mother's case is different. We found evidence that Jerry manipulated her grief after your father's death to recruit her into the scheme. Agent Foster explained that Mom had initially resisted Jerry's suggestions about asking me for money, but he had convinced her that I was financially obligated to support the family and that asking for help was actually protecting me from guilt about not contributing. Jerry's psychological manipulation was sophisticated. He identified each family member's emotional vulnerabilities and exploited them systematically. Your mother's grief, Tyler's employment insecurity, Emma's college stress. He turned their real problems into weapons for extracting money from you. 2 days later, Jerry was arrested at his business. The local news covered it as a major financial crime story, and I got calls from 3 different reporters wanting to interview me. Agent Foster advised me to decline all media contact until after the trial. Tyler and Emma were arrested the same day, but both were released on their own recognizance pending trial. Mom wasn't charged initially, pending further investigation into Jerry's manipulation tactics. Emma called me that evening from jail. It was the first time I had heard her voice since before the text message. Drake, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never wanted it to go this far. How far did you want it to go, Emma? I don't know. I was 21 when it started, and Jerry made it sound like you wanted to help. He said successful people need to feel needed by their families, and that taking your money was actually good for your self-esteem. Did you believe that? At first, maybe, but somewhere along the way, it became about the lifestyle, the car, the clothes, the freedom to focus on school without working. It was easier to keep taking the money than to admit what we were doing. Even when you were making jokes about how gullible I was, Emma started crying. Those messages were the worst thing I've ever done. I was trying to fit in with Tyler and Jerry, trying to act like I was tougher than I felt. But I hated myself every time I sent one of those texts. If you hated it, why didn't you stop? Because I didn't know how. Jerry said if we tried to come clean, you'd hate us forever. He said the only way to end it without destroying the family was to make a clean break. So you chose to let me think you all hated me. We thought it would hurt less than the truth. I listened to Emma cry for several minutes before speaking again. Emma, I need you to understand something. The truth always hurts less than lies, even when the truth is terrible. If you had come to me 2 years ago and told me what was happening, we could have worked it out. But instead, you let me live in a fantasy world where I thought I was helping people who actually needed help. I know, and I'm sorry. What happens now? My lawyer says if I cooperate fully with the FBI and testify against Jerry, I might get probation instead of jail time. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Jerry's assets were liquidated to pay back his victims. His moving business, his house, his vehicles, everything was sold. I recovered $43,000 of the $72,000 I had lost. More importantly, the other families got justice too. Elderly parents who had been manipulated into giving away their retirement savings, adult children who had sacrificed their own financial security to help relatives who didn't need help. Jerry's operation had destroyed trust and financial stability across multiple families, and seeing him held accountable felt like vindication for all of us. 6 months after sending that text message, I was in a very different place. I had moved to a larger apartment with Jessica. My savings account was recovering. I had started therapy to work through the emotional trauma of systematic family betrayal. Mom and I had slowly begun rebuilding our relationship. She had entered counseling to understand how Jerry had manipulated her grief, and she was genuinely working to make amends. It would take time, but there was hope for rebuilding trust. Emma and I exchanged occasional emails. She was working full-time and paying restitution to me monthly. Her probation officer said she was taking her community service seriously and seemed genuinely remorseful. I wasn't ready to forgive completely, but I could see that she was trying to become a better person. Tyler and I had no contact. He had blamed me for his imprisonment rather than taking responsibility for his choices. Some relationships can't be repaired, and I had made peace with that. The most important change was my perspective on family. Frank, Maria, Agent Foster, Attorney Chen, and especially Jessica had shown me what real support looked like. People who told me the truth even when it was difficult. People who helped me fight for justice even when it was complicated. People who stood by me without expecting anything in return. I learned that family isn't about blood relation or financial obligation. Family is about people who see your worth beyond what you can provide for them. Family is about people who want you to be happy and healthy, not people who see you as a resource to be exploited. The money I had lost was devastating, but it was also tuition for the most important education of my life. I learned to recognize manipulation. I learned to set boundaries. I learned that generosity without boundaries becomes enablement. Most importantly, I learned that fighting back against injustice, even when it's painful and complicated, is the only way to protect yourself and others from predators. Jerry's operation destroyed multiple families, but our willingness to seek justice prevented him from destroying more. Sometimes, doing the right thing requires sacrificing relationships that were built on lies anyway. A year later, I stood in the same kitchen where I had received that devastating text message, but everything was different. The apartment was brighter, filled with furniture Jessica and I had picked out together. The coffee was hot because I actually had time to enjoy it. My phone showed bank account balances that reflected financial recovery and smart boundaries. I was preparing breakfast for Jessica and me when my phone buzzed with a message. For a split second, my heart jumped, wondering if it was another family emergency, but it was just Frank, sending me a photo from a financial crimes prevention seminar where he was speaking about Jerry's case. Thought you'd want to know your story is helping other families recognize financial manipulation, Frank wrote. 3 people approached me after the presentation, saying they recognized similar patterns in their own families. That message meant more to me than any apology I had received from my blood relatives. The pain I had experienced was preventing other people from going through the same thing. Jessica walked into the kitchen wearing one of my old t-shirts, her hair still messy from sleep. "Good morning. What's that smile about?" I showed her Frank's message. "Our story is helping other people. Our story," she repeated, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I liked the sound of that. Jessica had become my real family through this crisis. She had supported me through the investigation, celebrated the legal victories, and helped me rebuild my financial and emotional life. When Tyler was sentenced, she was the one who held me while I cried for the brother I had lost. When Jerry's assets were liquidated and I received my restitution check, she was the one who helped me decide how to use the money wisely. We had used part of my recovered funds as a down payment on a small house in a neighborhood we both loved. Instead of financially supporting people who didn't need or appreciate help, I was building a life with someone who valued what I offered beyond money. Mom visited us there last month. It was awkward, but not hostile. She was in therapy and working to understand how her grief had made her vulnerable to Jerry's manipulation. She apologized again, more specifically this time, acknowledging not just that she had hurt me, but understanding how and why her actions had been harmful. I let my fear of losing the house override my responsibility to protect my son, she said. Jerry convinced me that asking you for money was normal family support, but I should have questioned why it felt wrong. The conversation was difficult, but it was honest. We weren't rebuilding the relationship I had thought we had before. We were building a new relationship based on truth instead of obligation. Emma had finished her community service and was halfway through paying her restitution. She sent me monthly updates along with her payments, sharing details about her job, her therapy, and her efforts to rebuild her life without taking advantage of other people. I wasn't ready to trust her completely, but I could see genuine change. Tyler was still in federal prison. Emma said he spent most of his time blaming me for his situation rather than accepting responsibility for his choices. Some people learn from consequences, and others just get angry about them. Tyler apparently fell into the second category. But the most meaningful change was in how I approached relationships generally. I had learned to recognize the difference between people who needed help and people who were testing my boundaries. I had learned to offer support without sacrificing my own financial security. I had learned that saying no to unreasonable requests actually protected relationships instead of damaging them. Jessica and I had talked about marriage, but we were taking it slowly. Both of us wanted to make sure we were building something based on genuine compatibility rather than crisis bonding. But every conversation we had about our future felt grounded in reality instead of fantasy. "What are you thinking about?" Jessica asked, noticing that I had gotten quiet while making breakfast. "Just how different everything is now. A year ago, I thought my family hated me, and I had no idea why. I thought I had failed them somehow, and now I know that their rejection actually protected me from years more of exploitation. Getting cut off was the best thing that could have happened to me." Jessica kissed my cheek. "Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened to you." That afternoon, Agent Foster called with a final update on Jerry's case. All the restitution payments have been processed, and Jerry's appeals have been exhausted. Hell serve his full sentence. But I wanted you to know that your case has become a model for how we investigate family financial fraud. Your documentation and cooperation helped us develop better procedures for future cases. I'm glad something good came out of it. More than you know. 2 other federal districts have used your case as a template for prosecuting similar operations. Jerry's conviction has led to charges against 3 other people running comparable scams in different states. After hanging up with Agent Foster, I sat in our backyard and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The financial loss had been devastating at the time, but I had recovered more than money. I had learned who I could trust, what real love looked like, and how to protect myself from manipulation. The family that had rejected me had been based on lies and exploitation. The family I had built with Jessica, Frank, and the other people who supported me through the crisis was based on honesty and mutual care. I thought about my father and what he would think about how everything had turned out. Dad had always taught us that family takes care of family, but Jerry had twisted that value into a weapon. The real lesson was that family means people who care about your well-being, not people who see you as a resource to be exploited. In the end, losing $72,000 and 3 years of deception had taught me something priceless: the difference between being loved and being used. The difference between generosity and enabling. The difference between family loyalty and financial exploitation. As the sun set behind our small house, Jessica and I sat together planning our next steps. We talked about travel, career changes, maybe starting a family of our own someday. But mostly, we talked about building a life based on trust, honesty, and mutual support. The text message that had shattered my world a year ago had actually saved my life. Sometimes the most devastating moments turn out to be the most liberating. I learned that real family doesn't ask you to sacrifice your financial security to prove your love. Real family doesn't mock your generosity behind your back. Real family doesn't disappear when their needs are met. Real family celebrates your success, supports your boundaries, and wants you to be happy even when there's nothing in it for them. Looking back, getting that brutal text message was the moment my real life began. Thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who were taking advantage of your generosity? How did you handle the balance between wanting to help and protecting yourself from exploitation? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to fight back against family manipulation. Your support means everything to me, and I hope my experience helps others recognize when help becomes harmful. Remember, you deserve relationships built on respect, not exploitation. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing.